From Ann Tyndall. This morning, I walked the dog up the street. It was a perfect winter's morning. An icy breeze was blowing, clouds were gathered in the sky. As the sun rose, the gray-white sky turned to rosy smoke. The sun finally appeared in the east. Nothing extraordinary, but the moment offered a blessing on the new day. Such blessings have been given daily for more millions of years than we can ever imagine. I'm reminded that what will get us through times of rapid change, hard times, times of uncertainty, dangerous times, will be our ability to be blessed and fed by abiding things. The manifold blessings of the sun rising in the morning, the song of a bird heard as if for the first time, the stillness of the night, the smile of a baby offered to you as if she had been waiting for you, the faithfulness of lovers and friends, the hand outstretched in reconciliation, trembling, touching through the barriers of estrangement, healing again and again, the persistence of love, the persistence of love, the persistence of love. In this new year, may we know more blessings than curses. May your hand reach out more than clench. May you be claimed more by love than indifference, more by hope than by fear or cynicism. May the creative power rise up in you, grounding you and guiding you in the border of what is yet possible for you, those close to you, and our world. May it be.
So as we prepare to receive the message from Reverend Terri this morning, I invite us to just pause again to hear the words of Poet Laureate Joy Harjo. At some point, we have to understand that we do not need to carry a story that is unbearable. We can observe the story, which is mental, feel the story, which is physical, let the story go, which is emotional, then forgive the story, which is spiritual, after which we use the materials of it to build a house of knowledge. Reverend Terri, welcome to this place, literally this place. Speak to us, words of truth, words of hope, words that lead us forward. Thanks.
The practice for the month of January is story. So I want to begin by sharing a story called The Broken Story Story. Are you going to remember our January theme? What is it?
Story.
You got it. The Broken Story Story was written by Reverend Christine Leon Tracy, and I've adapted it slightly. Once upon a time, there was a man with a story. This wasn't any old once upon a time story, not a story you can find on a bookshelf or hear around the campfire. This was his story and no one else's. This story had been carefully crafted. It began before he had been born and told of his loves and fears, his dreams realized and his dreams yet to come. This story was complete. It told his whole life, including bits that still existed in his imagination. In fact, the story was so complete, and he was so happy with his story, that he carried it around to make sure that it was safe. Even though it was kind of bulky and unwieldy, he didn't mind because this was his story. The thing, though, about this story was it was very fragile. It was made up of many pieces and held together only by his mind. He was worried it might break apart at any minute. And so he grew more and more protective of his story. He held it super close. As he went about his life, he checked on the story to make sure that he was following it correctly. He didn't go on adventures. He avoided unknowns because, well, they might break his story. Then one day, the inevitable happened. Without warning, his story broke. He didn't see it coming. He hadn't done anything wrong at all. But there it was, laying in 1,000 shattered pieces on the ground, sunlight reflected off the bits of story he had so carefully protected all of these years. The man was heartbroken. And since his story hadn't told him to put the pieces back together, he was at a loss. What was he supposed to do? He sat down next to the pile of pieces and cried. A while later, maybe minutes, maybe hours, a group of people came out of the nearby building and saw him sitting on the sidewalk, surrounded by a pile of broken pieces. Clearly, this man needed help. "What happened here?" someone asked. "My story, it's gone. I worked so hard to build it, to protect it, to keep it from harm, and now it's gone. It's gone. It's gone," he wailed in despair. "Is this the story here?" someone else asked. "Yes, look at it. There's nothing left of it. It's just rubble. It's just pieces." A child said, "But I see it right here. It's not gone. We just have to put it back together again." "Put it back together," said the man. "There's no way. You don't know what it looked like. You don't know what the story is. How will you put it back together if you don't even know who I am?" The child was bold and confident. "Don't worry. With all of us here to help, we'll put it back together. It might not be what you expect, but it might even be more beautiful than before." And so they swept up the pieces of this man's story ever so carefully. They picked up those pieces, and they all went together into the building from which they had emerged. They poured the man some hot coffee, and they sang a song he had never heard before. Something about coming again and again, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times. "Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come." The song was soothing. The coffee was warm and tasty. He began to feel hope again, that his story could maybe, just maybe, but be put back together again. It took a long time. Maybe it was days, maybe it was years, but they got it all back together. And they added a few new parts. Some of the old parts, they didn't fit anymore, but that was okay. The child had been right. It was so much more beautiful than it was before. And this time, the story was held together not only by his imagination, but by the imagination and support of an entire community. It wasn't fragile, and it even allowed for adventure and new stories. So what do you think? I think many of us are like that man, at least for some parts of our lives or maybe parts of our stories, holding them carefully, protecting them from harm, from change, from adventures, keeping them close. I know I can very much relate to this story. Far too many times I have been that man, believing this, not trusting that, absolutely certain this happened exactly as I remembered. I am positive that the estrangement that I experience with my sister is entirely her fault. I am positive that I never, I'm positive I must have, yes, yep, that's me. The year I turned 40, I decided the stories that I had been telling myself and living out couldn't be all there was for the rest of my life. With good health and good luck, I was only at 40 at the halfway mark. I needed to find a new way and free other parts of me because I wanted so desperately to uncover a deeper vocation. I too wanted to leave the corporate world. I wanted to leave the stories behind that I had and find a different way. I felt such deep urge, anxiousness, desire, something to find something different. I knew that there was something else out there. So shortly after my 40th birthday, I packed up my two-door Honda hybrid hatchback, Honda Insight, little red space age with this sweeping tire protectors. I don't know if you remember seeing this from about 15 years ago. It was very far out there. It was tiny too, just 2 seats and a little hatchback that was sort of even with your head because all of the batteries for the hybrid were underneath. But it was just big enough that I could fit my 2 puffy white fluff balls, Daisy, my Bashan, and Benson, my poodle mix. I bought a tent, and I bought or borrowed supplies that I had never used in my entire life. And then I left. I set off, leaving my spouse at home, just me and my 2 dogs on a 3-week, 5,500-mile car camping adventure across western United States. And it was an adventure. When I got back, I continued this pilgrimage of discovery through months of an intentional writing practice. Among the pieces of my story strewn across miles of roadways and scribbled on pages of notepaper, I did find something beautiful. Something new and unexpected emerged. And similar to the man in our opening tale, I allowed my story to change through the imagination and support of community and support of my faith. Some of these times of transition are unforeseen, like when the man's story broke. And some are intentional, like the gift of space and freedom that I am so lucky and fortunate to have received and embraced. Some are also predictable, like welcoming a new year. meeting Monday, every Monday at the start of every single week. Monday comes every Monday. I have some feelings about Mondays. We feel seasonal shifts. We celebrate birthdays or anniversaries or the day we discover that we don't have to maybe be on dialysis any longer. All transitions, no matter their scale or impact, can, both psychologically and spiritually, invite us to remake or recreate or retell our individual and our collective stories. We only need to orientate ourselves towards those opportunities. Novelist Terri reminds us that there is always a story, that it's all stories, really. The sun coming up every day is a story. Everything's got a story in it. Change the story, change the world. Change the story, change the world, change ourselves, change our relationships with ourselves, change our relationships with our neighbors, with our friends, our loved ones, and maybe even those that we might think of as our enemies. Change life itself. Our stories embody us. We hold them in our hearts and we feel them in our guts. Sometimes we clench our stories with our fists. Sometimes we kick them down the road with our feet. Sometimes our stories scream in our ears, like the story that I had and held and fought when I was 40. And sometimes they whisper so softly that just the hairs on the back of your neck are the only things that can pick them up. Our stories slough off of us like dead skin, and our stories can linger in all 30 trillion of our human cells in our bodies. But above all, our stories remind us that we are not human beings on a spiritual path, but spiritual beings on a human path. So on this first week of the new year of 2025, as recognized by the arbitrary flip of the Gregorian calendar that our modern secular society uses for the purpose of reckoning time as a social construct, but here we are, just whatever day it is, 4 or 5 days into the new year. I want to invite us to experience a way of maybe reimagining our stories by using the winding and twisting and turning paths of the labyrinth. I'm inviting us to go on a short journey together as pilgrims. That sounds like a fun thing to do for the new year, doesn't it? Don't worry, we're not going to be traveling on foot or wheels. I'm not going to have us go on a field trip out into the cold. We're going to do it right here in the sanctuary. Those online, those in the building, all have an opportunity to journey on the labyrinth using our fingers or our eyes or our imaginations. And if you don't know what a labyrinth, I thought I should maybe fill you in a little bit. Because a labyrinth is something that's really special to me, and I am so excited to share this experience with you. A labyrinth is a symbol or a pattern. It contains a single pathway that turns back on itself at least once before leading to a center. There are so many designs, many designs, some ancient and some modern. Historically, the words labyrinth and maze have been used interchangeably, but they are distinct. Labyrinths are not mazes. Mazes are designed to make you lose your way, to challenge you, to test your wits and your perseverance. They are a game. They are out there to work your brain. Can you find the prize? Can you figure out the pass? Can you reach the goal? Can you win the game? That's what a maze is all about. A labyrinth, though, labyrinth doesn't have any tricks. There are no dead ends, no blind alleys, no gotchas. A labyrinth is made to help you find your way. There's no right or wrong way to travel its path. I have walked and danced and journeyed along many labyrinths, from grassy paths barely mown to designs painted on large sheets of canvas or set into a terrazzo floor. The terrazzo floor being at First Universalist Church in Minneapolis, if you ever have a chance to go there. I've traced my fingers on pathways grooved in wood and clay. Some of these labyrinths you can see up here, including this little guy, which I made for my ordination. And the labyrinth that you see on your order of service is the same pattern that was also on the cover of the order of service of my ordination in 2018. I live less than a mile from a large 11-circuit grass and paver Chartres-style labyrinth. I don't know if any of you have been. I looked this up. You have a labyrinth just 11 miles northwest of here at the cemetery next to Emmanuel Lutheran Church of Almalind. Did I say that town right? Almalind. All right, I'm close. How many have been to that one? Oh, look at that, a couple of you. All right, maybe we'll have to have an adventure this summer and go there. The labyrinth is just one form of meditation and contemplation. There's no training needed to traverse its circuitous path. The most common way is just to set an intention, to cross the threshold and simply follow the pathway to the center. The labyrinth center is a metaphor for our own center, for the stories and wisdoms and connections that can be found there. We get to spend some time in the center, time to release or let go, to relinquish, to be open with a receptive heart. And whenever we're ready, we can follow that same path, returning back to the threshold, offering our gratitude and allowing the experience to just be and to see what it might bring. A labyrinth facilitator named Linda Sowright shares that when you walk the labyrinth, your story is part of a much larger picture, one filled with mystery. The labyrinth opens you to the mystery of your life and the greater mystery in which all life is held. This is what heals. So today I'm inviting us all to mark the transition of the new year in a very particular way that comes from being in community. When we join together with others who seek to make meaning, who reflect on what is eternal and what is good, who bravely ask about purpose and believe in the power of love. It doesn't matter whether you celebrated New Year or not. There is just something pretty special about marking these times of transition in community. And so I hope that you will join in this time together. So you have some options that I'm going to describe. This is now the instructional part of my message. There's going to be a video in a sec, and you don't have to put it up now, but there'll be a video on the screen. It is of a clay finger labyrinth that I made out of ceramic clay and had fired, that I grooved the paths with my own finger. So those online are able to follow that path. You can even just put your finger or a pencil eraser or some sort of pointy device and follow it right on your monitor, your screen, your device. For those of us here in the room, you can use the labyrinth that is on your order of service. And look at this. I have a whole bunch of other designs up here. And I have 2 wooden and 1 clay. So I'm going to give you a minute. Please do not be Midwestern nice and polite and just sit in your chair waiting for somebody else. If you want to try a different labyrinth, just come on up and grab one, all right? And if you don't, you don't. That's okay. But if you want to see what else might shimmer for you, come on up and grab one. You can borrow it. You can flip through it.
Angela. That's complex.
And these bigger labyrinths, you won't have time to get through it all today, but bring it home. Do it later. Look at that dancing woman. Yeah, it's not a good one. I didn't bring a ton, so if you didn't get a chance to have one, I'm so sorry. But look at this. You can grab one of these little wooden ones or that little, there you go. Look at that. There's one more up here, if anyone wants the big boy. Oh, yes. And there's these paper plate ones. So if we had children here today, and adults are children too, we have some paper plates, and there's yarn and glue in the children's room where you can glue the yarn onto the path of the labyrinth for a little 3D version. So here's one more if anyone wants it. So here's the thing. You don't have to actually follow the path. Again, there's no wrong or right way. You may follow the path. You may cross the lines. Oh my goodness, cross the lines. Jump to a different path. Maybe you want to go directly to the circle, to the center. Perhaps you want to stay on the outside edges. Or perhaps you want to just take in it as a whole. See if you can tap into your intuition, to what your heart might be saying. This is what I want and need in this moment right now. All right, Anne, that's your cue. I'm going to have you put up a video. We're going to go for 2 minutes. There's going to be some somewhat cheesy, free copyright-free music that will be playing. It's okay. I made this video almost 15 years ago when I was a fellow with the Church of the Larger Fellowship. And so there's me before this. I'm not showing you that part. I have very different hair back then. But the video will play for 2 minutes. There'll be a chime at the 1 minute mark, so you'll know when you're about halfway through. Okay? Are we ready to begin? Okay, let's begin. May whatever you experienced or not give you a little insight of what your story might say to you today. This is a practice that can be done at any time. So perhaps pull out your labyrinth once in a while and just follow its path and see what emerges.